mental health specialist, Miss Bianca McCall. Hey, Miss Bianca, how you doing?
Hello, Dr. Sean. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. How
It,
about yourself?
I'm doing exceedingly glad and grateful. I'm glad to have you. So here's my first question to you, Miss Bianca. Tell me where you wish you could live. If you could live anywhere in the world, where do you wish you could live and why?
Yeah, yeah. I'm in the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, and I wouldn't be anywhere else right now.
No, I love that answer. It is a great answer because it affirms the choices that we've made without regret. Um, I'm wondering tonight, how did you make this journey to caring about mental health? Why, out of all the things you could have done with your life, why this?
Man, so I actually got into the study of mental health and became an epidemiologist, so a studier, a researcher of human behavior. And the reason why I want to do it is because I wanted to understand myself, what I was going through, and I wanted to understand my family as well. And so I was that kid, my master's program, we're talking about roles of dysfunction in families that have, abuse or mental illness or substance abuse. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. And I played that role. And that excited me to have some understanding. And so I'm passionate about education. I wanted to educate myself on what my life experiences were all about, what they meant, and so that I could further define my
Let me say
purpose.
this
Yes,
though.
sir.
That answer you just gave is so profound, and it's what I push people to do. Whatever you're trying to study, make sure it connects to your story and to your life. What excited you was that you saw yourself in what you were studying. Oh, one of the best answers I've ever heard. I love you. You had a near-death experience, and I'm calling it that. Other people would call it something else, but I'm calling it that. Talk to me about how close you came to death and why you were so close.
Well, I'll start with the why, Dr. Sean, and I appreciate you asking me this question and allowing me to share my story. But in starting with the why, I want to take everybody back to, me being a 17-year-old girl. I was a high school basketball standout, All American, top recruit, and I was on a recruiting trip and I sustained an injury that would require reconstructive surgery. So my near death experience, it actually came from just being a 17-year-old girl having to deal with an incredible loss, and a loss of identity, a loss of opportunity. And it was a very confusing time because, like I said, there's a fine line between wanting to die, wanting to end your life, and attempting suicide versus wanting to be out of pain.
Yes, when Bianca, as soon as you said it, I felt it because so many people think, oh, I never think about committing suicide, or I've never thought about that, but they don't realize that that's only because they haven't found the right pain.
Like you mentioned, it takes a certain type of pain, and if you lack the coping skills to be able to manage that, and you lack what I call mental fitness, then very quickly you could end up at the end stages of that.
Yeah, what you gave me tonight and all of us tonight, that I don't think I've ever heard anybody, and I've been doing this a while, and I don't think I've heard anybody say, is that suicide is a spectrum. We see it as the end result, or somebody actually trying, but what you're giving us tonight is to say, no, long before they actually get to that, they're already in the continuum. They're already in the spectrum. That is a powerful contribution you've made tonight, because here's what I got, and just correct me if I'm wrong, affirm me if I'm right. If we don't see it as a spectrum, we'll miss people who are already on the path.
So I created this online resource. It's called Reach In Now University, and that's at reachinnow.com. And that is the purpose of that online resource, is to educate people about this spectrum and to teach and help us build mental fitness, because we're for some reason able to wrap our minds around fitness in the physical body or the physical form, right? We know that we eat right, we go to the gym, that our physical body can be considered healthy. But when it comes to our psychology, especially in our community, we have a hard time wrapping our minds around what it takes to be mentally fit. And it takes the same daily devotion. It takes the same practices, and some of the same practices in terms of nutrition and physical exercise, but also, again, looking at ourselves as a total
on the court
person.
Yesterday, I think mental health in this country is at an all-time critical low. And for all of you watching tonight who say, why is Dr. Sean talking about suicide? Black people don't commit suicide. How about that's not true? Let me tell you.
But the alley-oop here is that, you're absolutely right, Dr. Sean. The CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, they reported in January of this year that since the beginning of the pandemic, they had seen an increase of 300,000 deaths related to mental dis-ease, which includes overdose from addiction. So 300,000 deaths, and of those, 40% is represented by Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. So Latino and Asian Pacific Islander communities. 40%, which is such a high percent. So that right there dispels the myth that Black people don't die by suicide. This is absolutely something that's affecting us all. And I welcome any conversation of why and how do we reverse such alarming increases in suicidality, traumatic experience. So Dr. Sean, if we take a look at advanced technology and the role of the internet and media in the increases of STSD, let's take a look, especially in the community, in our community, right? When one person in our tribe suffers, we all suffer. So when we witness the murders of men and women in our communities and they're broadcasted, how many of us experience that intense pain, that anger, anxiety, and other psychological, physical, and spiritual stress as though those traumas are our own, right? Yeah. So when we talk about the reason for mental health being at an all-time low, and conversely, mental illness being a very real problem, especially in our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, this is the reason why is we need to educate ourselves, become aware of what's triggering us. Yeah. We're not only traumatized from our past and in past generations, but we're re-traumatized every single day. Some of us every time we get online, every time we watch the news,
Yeah.